So, what's your civilization?
The Coast Salish First Nation.
Who are you?
I'm a Coast Salish historian.
Where are we?
We are in a forest.
And whose land are we on?
The Coast Salish Nation's land.
Watch out. How long have the Coast Salish been a civilization?
It began in 3000 BCE.
How many nations are there in Canada?
630.
Where did they reside?
The Northwest Pacific coast of Canada and the United States.
And whereabouts would that be?
Vancouver Island, the Lower Mainland, Washington State, and Oregon.
Can we see a map?
There you go.
Can you name a few of the Coast Salish nations?
Musqueam, Tsawwassen, and Squamish.
How does each nation differ?
They all have their own languages and traditions, but they all are tied together with their culture.
Where did the people live?
In the wintertime, they lived in permanent villages, and in the summertime, they lived in temporary camps while they gathered food.
What were their houses like?
They lived in large cedarwood houses, also known as plank houses.
Why did they choose to live in the Northwest Pacific area?
They wanted water bodies for fishing, and they chose to live in forests for the cedar bark and for all the fruits, vegetables, and nuts that they harvested.
What type of government did they have?
They were not a democratic society. Instead, the clan with the most wealth had the most power.
How was the chief of a family determined?
The Coast Salish people were split into basic social groups where a whole bunch of extended family lived with a common ancestor, and the person with the closest link to that common ancestor was the chief of the family.
How was the rest of the family ranked?
It was determined by the closeness of their relationship to the chief.
Who divided the wealth amongst the people?
The chief.
How was the wealth distributed amongst the people?
The highest ranking individual received the most wealth, and the lowest ranking individual received the least.
Who was the chief of the village?
The chief of the most powerful family was also the chief of the village.
Did that family get any special privileges?
They got to display their family's crest on village totem poles.
Can I see a photo of a chief?
Here you go.
What about a totem pole? One of their forms of art.
Totem poles were popular
And when did they start constructing totem poles?
in the early 20th century.
What did totem poles symbolize?
Their ancestors, cultural beliefs, clan lineages, and notable events.
Any other forms of art?
Weaving was popular.
And what was weaving used for?
Ceremonial purposes, art, and to make equipment and baskets for hunting and gathering.
Did they have any special ceremonies?
The common custom was the potlatch ceremony.
And what was it for?
It was a way for the host to maintain or acquire noble status.
What were some attributes of the ceremony?
Dancing, gift-giving, and the dancers all dressed up in animal masks, feathers, and paint.
What did they do for recreation?
They took part in a lot of sports that resemble our present-day lacrosse, rugby, and martial arts, and they also played a gambling game called slaw hall.
Did they have any important rituals?
The first salmon feast, where the bones of the salmon were thrown back into the water to show that the salmon were well treated and welcome back next year.
What did they believe in?
Guardian spirits and transmutation.
How did they pass on their beliefs?
From their elderly through songs, dances, and stories.
What did they think of the spirits?
In their culture, they believed that every living thing was connected to spirits, and supernatural beings were around them all the time.
How did they connect to the spirit world?
Through shamans or medicine men.
And what did they do?
They cured the sick, controlled the weather, and made sure there was enough food, all by communicating with the spirits.
Can you tell me about the Vision Quest journey?
It was a way for young males to go through a rite of passage and enter adulthood, and it was typically practiced by all Coast Salish tribes.
What kind of technology was used for carving?
Ads were very popular.
What was it made out of?
Hard green stones like jadeite or nephrite.
Can we see a picture of an adze?
There you go!
Did they use anything else?
Chisels,
What were they made out of?
beaver teeth, and elk horn.
What were these tools used for?
Making canoes.
And what were canoes used for?
It was an important means of transportation for the Coast Salish people.
And how were canoes made?
A log was hollowed, steamed, and spread to widen the canoe and rise the bow and stern, and then was carved.
What were the three types of canoes?
Shovel nose, West Coast, and Salish style.
Can we see a picture of them? What equipment did they use for hunting?
Snares, deadfalls, harpoons, and bows and arrows.
And what did they use for fishing?
Nets, hooks, underwater, traps, cedar fish lines, and harpoons.
How did they preserve their food?
They used smokehouses so it would last them through the winter months, and oftentimes they smoked salmon.
What was the staple material that they used?
Cedar bark.
What did they make with it?
Collecting baskets, hats, and mats to provide their homes with extra warmth.
Can we see a picture?
There you go!
Who was responsible for making clothing?
Women.
They spin wool.
With a spindle and whirl.
How did they weave?
With their fingers, and it allowed for extra tight weave to create elaborate patterns.
What was their daily attire?
Cloaks and cedar bark skirts.
What did they wear on special occasions?
Tilt-up blankets made of mountain goat wool twined with cedar bark.
What did people wear in the cold weather?
Fur cloaks and heavy blankets made of dog and mountain goat wool.
What was the main conflict for the Coast Salish people?
It was with the Europeans over their land.
How did it start?
The Europeans discovered their lush land and started trading with the Coast Salish people.
Then what happened?
Some people argue that the initial contact of the two civilizations introduced diseases like smallpox that was devastating, and it also wiped out a large part of the Coast Salish nation.
What did the Europeans do?
They felt that they were superior to the Coast Salish nation, so they tried to westernize communities, and therefore the Indian Act was implicated.
What happened to the Coast Salish children?
They were taken from their families and pushed into residential schools where they were stripped of their traditions, lifestyle, languages, and beliefs.
What were they taught in residential schools?
They were educated as Canadians, so they learned to write and read either English or French. They learned arithmetic, and they also learned a new religion.
Can we see a photo of a residential school? What did the Europeans wrongfully do to the Coast Salish?
They abused and violated the Coast Salish people, and many children lost the chance to grow up within their own culture.
How have present-day Canadians tried to apologize?
The Canadian government now offers free post-secondary education, tax-exempt, and well-being programs to the Coast Salish peoples.
Why is this culture significant to history?
It shows how many other cultures tried to wipe out their nations and did them wrong in many ways, but the Coast Salish people still survived.
Is this civilization still present today?
Yes.
Where do they live now?
In the same areas as well as sometimes with Aboriginal reserves.
Well, thank you so much for answering 73 questions with Vogue.
Thanks for having me!